Welcome to the Resound Worship Songwriting Podcast, episode 21. This is an interview special where Sam meets spoken word artist Peter Nevland.
Well, I'm really excited to be speaking to Peter Nevland, all the way from, where are you, Pete?
I'm in Austin, Texas.
And it's like some really early time of the morning for you.
It's not that early. It's only a little after 10, so can't claim to be, I should be washed and put together. And
Have you had enough caffeine?
I stay away from caffeine. I'm one of those weird spoken word artists and musicians, whatever, that hates coffee.
Really?
Caffeine does nothing for me. I tell people that people are my espresso.
See, the first time I met you was, I think really the only time I met you, apart from today, was at Spring Harvest 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you came into a venue that I was running, and you did this crazy spoken, what do you call it?
I call what I do spoken groove, but you can call it spoken word.
Spoken groove. Really. And it was just like totally insane. And if you said to me that guy doesn't drink caffeine, I would not have believed you.
Right.
Because you seem fully caffeinated at that point.
No other stimulants either. It's just the Holy Spirit, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah. He made me like this. I figure I ought to, enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, I met you at that. And then Joel, who also does this podcast with me, he met you, or saw you at least, at the Kendrick Songwriters event a few years ago.
Yes.
When
right.
you were there talking about Psalms, and you've done this book exposing the Psalms.
That's right.
And then a CD out of that too.
We now have the album out. Yep, that's true.
So good stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then this funny thing happened when we were recording the last podcast. We were talking about poetry, and Joel just goes, "Oh, we should talk to Pete Nevland. He's brilliant. I wonder if anyone listening to this knows Pete Nevland." And I went, "Oh, I've met him at Spring Harvest."
Maybe. So the two of you know me. Everybody else is like, who is this guy?
No, they were all over it. So here we are. And I got in contact, and you very kindly said, yes, let's do it. So let's just start with the spoken word, spoken groove. If people don't know what that is, or haven't really got, maybe one picture I would have in my mind. Have you seen the movie So I Married an Axe Murderer?
Yeah, no, everybody starts with that.
It's like, whoa, man.
Woman.
Yeah.
She walked the corner and said, I don't like you. Yeah. Get out my hair. I've got an axe. I'm not going to kill you, just defend you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a type of spoken word, sure.
Okay. Yeah. And that's pretty much all you do?
Okay, so this is interesting, right? Most of the time spoken word artists, when you're thinking of that, what he's doing is he's intoning his words exactly on the drum beats, right? Uh-huh. They're not as tied in a lyrically as like a song would be, but he's totally connected with the drums. And a lot of times you'll hear that, you think of like a Longfellow poem, I shot an arrow into the air. It fell to earth, I knew not where. For so quickly it flew that sight cannot follow it in its flight. And you're thinking of standard rhythm, standard rhyme. A lot of times now, spoken word stuff that I do probably comes more out of like poetry slam styling. But then the other part of it is that I grew up singing tons of songs, loving to worship God, also loving lots of rock and roll. And so I have more of a lyric quality that comes into my stuff. So I don't limit myself to just either being tied to the drums or being apart from the drums. Sometimes, I'll have a piece where I start something with a boom, maybe it's a flared-out russet brown corduroy jeans that are skipping the sidewalk off my steps. Maybe it's the way synthetic fabric folds enormous lapels and drapes them across my chest. Maybe it's the sounds of Herbie's headhunters jumping through the cool morning breeze of my windows. I don't know. But I swear I'm infected with the feelings of funkness. That music's so sweet. It's time to get down with the funky sound of a crazy celebrational feast. Yeah, and just go off. And so you can tell that sometimes I'm playing around with the beat and sometimes I lock into the beat. And so that's, if I do something with a band, that's really helpful because then we can figure out how to play music with it and put music that underscores the piece. So then there's other times, where it doesn't need any music or needs to have none, and it's just about the story. It's about, sometimes I can see the future. David's 4.5-year-old eyes open portals to an alternate universe. Really? Yep. Not all the time, but sometimes. Wow. Let's race! His little legs bounded off outside, begging me to follow, right past his mom, flying around the corner. It's like there's no predictable rhythm associated with that.
Yeah.
But you can hear there's a certain cadence that comes in, and there's a rhythm that's almost like it's too difficult to pin down, but it's back there. And so I'll do that one a lot of times at the beginning of writing workshops for kids, and I'll ask them, was it poetry, was it not? And half the class picks one, half picks the other, and the one that picks, no poetry, they'll say, well, it didn't have any rhythm. I'm saying, you say I don't have no rhythm? And they'll go, no, it didn't have a not predictable rhythm. And other people go, no, it had a rhythm, and you could feel it, So, a spoken word, I would say that, think of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, right? If you could take that, and people have done this, you can look it up on YouTube, just put a beat behind it.
Yeah.
All great speakers, all people who know how to use words effectively, there's a rhythm that they have behind their speaking. You may not be able to tell automatically what it is, but there's a rhythm that informs how the words fall. And I would say that spoken word artists are people who they need to, or they should be able to understand that rhythm, whether they're tying into it like Mike Myers on So I Married an Axe Murderer, or seem like they're totally off it, but then you could go back and later and go, oh, wait a second, he's actually doing some cool stuff, playing with our expectation of where the rhyme and the rhythm fall and stuff like that. So that's pretty much a spoken word, and you can hear it all over the place. You start going and listening to music, you hear it in rap. It's a form of spoken word. You'll hear it. Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue. Yeah. He did a lot of spoken word songs set to music, and sometimes you'll even find it in worship. You'll find it in worship songs where people will have a song, and then they'll have like some spoken chorus, and we a lot of times think it's rap, and most of the time people are like, yeah, this is sort of rap, but it's kind of lame. What was it? I remember for Delirious album, did that On Christ the solid rock I will stand. One of their ending I think it's the final album, and then they had Toby Mac come in. He's like, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not, trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. Right? He's just doing it's just spoken instead of sung, right? So all those different forms, and I'm kind of like, hey, this is a huge sandbox to play in there. Or sand pit, sorry, for you English people. Well,
you don't... huge sand pit. I guess one of the things for worship songwriters, which is primarily the people listening to this podcast, right. I think we often feel like we are playing in this tiny sandpit where you have to use, a certain kind of language. It has to fit in the scan. It has to make sense immediately. It has to not be cheesy.
Right.
All these kind of restrictions that we immediately put on ourselves. So I guess I'd be interested to know, how would you encourage a worship songwriter to kind of break out a little bit and use maybe some of the insights you've had from spoken word and poetry and stuff to just ignite their writing again?
I don't know why we think that God has put those types of limitations on our worship. I think maybe part of it is we think, well, will people be able to follow us? But I've found that whenever I underestimate the intelligence of my audience, they usually get bored.
Yeah.
And so I would say you don't have to, And people are going to be used to a certain style of worship music, but most of the time, the parts that they love are the parts that are a little bit unexpected, the parts that are different than what we did. So what I find all the time is I always challenge students whenever I'm teaching them writing, is I'll give them words that don't seem to fit together at all. And if you look and analyze whether it's characters, whether it's plot, whether it's any type of writing, it's always the words that feel like they don't fit but belong that have the most power in your writing, whether either to detract from your writing if you don't know how to use them, or to enhance your writing. So, I challenge you, find a way to throw in, and I've done this with I've done worship writing workshops and stuff. Then I'll say, okay, you got the words unicorn, diaper, red, and lampshade. Put those in a worship song, right?
Yeah.
I had this one lady who was talking about, I think I used the word underwear, which is always great. This was in England. And so she wrote this song. She wrote this piece, a spoken word piece, about how God, even as something like, even when I'm stripped down in my underwear, you see me as beautiful.
Yeah.
And taking something like that, where you embrace that imagery, you kind of stir up that creativity. People get into that. I went to Graham Kendrick's church, right? Now, if anybody is the master Yoda of English worship, is Graham Kendrick, right? So he's doing his psalm surfing thing, which is amazing. Anytime you get the chance to see him do that, it's great. And so I came in and we did Exposing the Psalms. We'd done one of the tracks on Exposing the Psalms. Graham and I created together and recorded and stuff together. And so we did that piece. And then I was like, okay, I want to do this new one. It's not recorded yet. It's from Psalm 46. And it's called "The Baddest Man in Heaven's Got My Back," right? And so it's got this chorus that goes, "The baddest man in heaven's got my back. The funky God of misfits, mercies never leaves, and I'm attacked. The baddest man in heaven's got my back. The funky God of misfit mercy never leaves when I'm attacked." Real simple, right? Real easy for them to repeat.
Yeah.
So here's what I was like, hey, you know what? Let's do this together. I was so inspired by Graham. He's just straight singing the words from the Psalms. And they're not easy necessarily to follow, right? No, and so I'm like, well, shoot, if he could do that, we can do that with mine. These people are smart. So I go, okay, I got the first half, and this side of the audience is going to sing with me, and then this side of the audience, Graham, you're going to lead the second half. And so he's got to sing, "The funky God of misfit mercy never leaves when I'm attacked." And he's like, wait, how's it go? And I was like,
is there video of this?
I don't think there was video. There should have been. But anyway, we probably have to get a release, being Graham Kendrick and all this video. But anyway, he said, we figured it out, and the audience is all laughing, and we just turned it into like choir practice, right? And so I go, "The baddest man in heaven's got," and they started singing with me, right? And then he's like, "The funky God," leads them with, "The funky God of misfit mercy never leaves when I'm attacked," And it was awesome, right? And so they would do that, and then I'd signal to them, and they would stop, and I go, "Look at the earth, see it shake. Polar ice caps melt, greenhouse gases build. No human will is a match for climate change." Not singing all this stuff or speaking all this stuff, and then we'd come back in with the chorus, right? And they came back in right at the right times, and it was this amazing time. And the whole time we were doing stuff like that, where we're bringing in spoken word, we're bringing in sung choruses, and or other tracks that we had. They're singing "Praise the Lord," and "From the mountains and their peaks, praise the Lord." And I'm just a singer at this point, right? And everybody's all singing together, and at the end of it, worship was coming out. We were rejoicing. There was authentic celebration that we could, anybody who was in that room, we were all going, "Oh my goodness, the presence of the Lord is here. We don't want this to end." And I'm just going, man, that is unexpected. Why are we not taking people on unexpected adventures in worship, because our God is not tame, right? If we learn anything from C.S. Lewis, he's not a tame lion. And doesn't he want us to explore the unmatched regions of his creativity? I was reading this in Psalm 26. Psalm. It's still in Psalm 25 this morning. And he says, the secret of the Lord is with those who fear him, and he will show them his covenant. It's like, oh man, I want to know your secrets, God. And what he shows me is hey, you know what? When you're crazy and weird, I'm with you then too. And I like that stuff. So let's do more of that,
Do you think, I mean, I agree with you, why are we not opening the doors to this creativity? Is it because we're only influenced by a very narrow, do you think that you coming from doing poetry slams means that you've had and listening to, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, does that influence you in a way that you can pull from that? Whereas what I kind of observe is, I mean, I used to teach on the faculty at London School of Theology, and I would have these students, and they would say, "Oh, I listen to such a wide range of music." So I'd say, "Well, okay, what's this wide range?" And they'd say, "Oh, it's everything from, Delirious to Israel Houghton," and it was like,
"Yeah,
okay,
that's not bad.
That's not really a wide range of music. I mean, okay, but they were in such a narrow groove of what they were listening to." And what they were experiencing, and what they were prepared to bring into church.
I think sometimes that's it, but I think it's even more. I think it's even worse than that. I think that most of us have a very wide range of influences in our music, in our art, but that we don't believe that certain ones are allowed to be brought into the church building. And I think the huge problem comes back to, we have believed a lie that the enemy has told us. And the lie that the enemy has told us is that you might, if you start to get too passionate and start to express your heart to God, you might say something that's wrong. And it's more important to be right than to be close to God. And I'm telling you, that is a lie straight from the pit of hell. And the reason I know that is because it's in Genesis. When Satan comes as a serpent to Adam and Eve, and the very first thing he gets them to do is go to the tree of the knowledge of,
good and evil,
which could otherwise be translated as the tree of the knowledge of right and wrong. And it really it means everything in between. But he's like, hey, he tells them it's more important for you to know what's right and what's wrong, as opposed to be close to God. Can you even trust God? He's trying to keep this back from you. There's this knowledge here. And we just eaten it right up in the Western church because we're afraid of not being right. And you know what? God is not afraid of that. God is not afraid of us not being right. And in fact, it would be better if we could come and expose our hearts really to him, because then when we find out how we're screwed up, he can heal us. And I think we need a new understanding of what worship is. Look at the people that worship Jesus throughout the gospel. What did they do? I mean, what happened was Jesus did something amazing for them, whether it was he rose from the dead. The disciples saw him, and then it says when they saw him and he arrives in glory and he's like, all power, all authority have been given to me on heaven and earth. They're like, oh, surely that's true. And they fall down on their face and worship him. Or he does a miraculous healing with someone and they fall down at his feet and worship him, and it's a response. There's passion. They don't care what it looks like at that point. Yeah. They don't care if anybody walking by is seeing, because they're meeting the living, resurrected God. And sometimes I wonder if we don't really want to meet the living, resurrected God and have an encounter with him that changes our emotions, changes our habits, changes all this stuff. And so what we do is we separate and we say, well, this stuff that's the creative, wild stuff, I like it, but I don't think it's accepted in church, and people might tell me I'm bad for that. So I keep it outside of church and I limit myself to the stuff that I know is accepted. And then we become stale and lifeless over time. And we need to ask the Lord, what do you want me to do, God? Anyway, it's a thought.
It's good.
That's one of my thoughts. That's what I've been seeing over and over. And I grew up in the church. I love the church. But I started feeling that too. It was like, man, well, there's this whole, why do I limit myself? Why do I not use certain words? And there are some that don't evoke, awe and wonder. But, there have been times when I've been like, God, I had a bowel obstruction, had surgery, and I was like, thank you, God, I can poop again. Yeah. Now, everybody else may not follow me in thanking the Lord for being able to have a bowel movement, right? But I'm telling you, at some point, there's a part of my heart that comes alive in worship, and there are more realms than just saying the word grace. I don't, a lot of times we don't even know what the word grace means, or saying the word holiness, or power. A lot of these words, we've said them so much, we don't know what they mean, and so we need to find new, solid, concrete, image-rich words. And I would just say, pick some. Think of an image that says grace to you. Like, for instance, I had no idea how to drive a car, but I felt like God said, get in the car and drive. And when I got in the car, I learned on the way how to drive the car. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something that would be a concrete image. Yeah, and it was a miracle. God gave me his power. I became like Neo in the Matrix, learning Kung Fu. But I was learning to drive a car, and I felt like God was just downloading all this stuff into me right then. Oh my gosh, I'm walking in his power and not in my understanding. And it made me look better than all these other drivers out there. It made me look, all this stuff, right? Find a context to put it in so it becomes real again. So that's my challenge out there.
Wonders of the earth, all that it contains, fingerprints of love, trace the maker's name. Stormy seas that roar, howling wind that screams, skies where eagles soar, every heart that dreams is yours. Who then can ascend to your holy place, pure in heart and hands, only by your grace we come. Lift up your heads, all you gates, be lifted up. Let the King of Glory in. Who is he who comes, clothed in dazzling light?
That's great. That's great. And it leads us on to talk about the Psalms, I think, because your approach to the Psalms is not just to say, let's neaten this up so that they're metrical and we can sing them in a tune, or let's just write a nice tune to fit. I mean, you very much, attack the Psalms and then let them inspire your own creativity or your own rewrites or your own stories. So just, tell us how that project came about.
I had a number of different people suggest this little idea of me rewriting, or not rewriting, but writing a piece of poetry, spoken word, whatever, to the Psalms. Each one of them, I was like, that's a lot of work, 150 of them there. Thanks. And so I kind of avoided it for a long time. And it's probably now 8 years ago or something like that I finally go, God just was stirring that desire, and that's the cool thing is God. I find that God a lot of times speaks things to me, but He doesn't force me to do them right away. He stirs desire, and He's patient. And so as that desire, so I just go, all right, I'm going to do it. And I started trying to do it. I'd written a few pieces to a few of the Psalms, and I think that's what started it. Is just I'd just be reading in the Psalms, and I go, whoa, this is really cool. But I don't think people understand it now. Why? When it says in, I think it's Psalm. You get mixed up in the numbers sometimes. Psalm 146, I believe, where it says, "Don't put your trust in princes or in the Son of Man, whose spirit returns to the earth. Blesses the man who makes the Lord his trust." The God of heaven and earth. And I was like, well, in America we don't have princes. You guys have a prince, right? So you could write, do not put your trust in Prince Harry. And people would laugh, right? Yeah, I know his red hair is flaming and his intentions are glorious and trying to get disabled vets to come to life. But, we know, you and I both know that, he's partied a little bit too hard sometimes, whatever. You could write that piece, right? And so for me, I was like, at the time, George W. Bush was president. So I was like, do not put your trust in George W. Bush. No matter your inclination, your conservative consecration or scent of perspiration, don't you do it, because sure, he's got bumpkin good looks that no woman can deny. He's a really smart guy, and I hear he fries up third world terrorists supporting nations for breakfast, but we all know he can't help me with, much less spell, the contents of my grocery list, and all those tax cut tricks aren't the kind of fix my heart needs when I'm feeling lonely under a crowded sky. Anyway, so I'll go off on this thing, and then I say,
You might have to do a Trump one soon.
Oh,
that,
yeah,
right?
I know. Or a Hillary Clinton, either one, right? They both like, that's a whole nother issue.
That's a whole other podcast.
I converted it to a Barack Obama one too. And then, but then at the end, then I said, we know that you can't trust the weather, especially not there in England, the attraction of your chick magnet pimpified pleather pants, an endless romance, Sam's math skills, an endless stream of dollar bills, Jack and Jill are getting a purple pill or getting included in your grandfather's will. You can't trust a Thethelian when death is on the line. In fact, it seems that death is the only thing really certain, and that's completely depressing. But that's completely depressing, and it turns out not even remotely true since it's already been conquered. So what can you trust? Maybe I could stop the rain. Or what if I could harness the clouds? The breath from my mouth wrapping innocent children in the snuggly warmth of tender sheets. What if my breath dripped the dew? Knew every flight of the soaring eagle, gave it food, could change the mood of the hopeless, the defender of the fatherless, opening blind eyes, including the ostracized, healing the paralyzed. What if I could make the dead come to life? And what if I left all that power in the skies, just so I could be your friend? No matter what it costs me in the end. What if I limited myself to the frail form of my own creation, risking rejection, hurled insults, pointed spears of suffering, inhuman torture, being left alone by everyone, just so I could see your beautiful face again? Would you trust me then? I was like, whoa, that was cool. That's a different take on Psalm 146. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But, man, I felt the same
great.
thing. I was like, I'm looking at it from a totally different perspective. So I started doing this, and some come out as songs, some come out of those types of spoken word pieces. So, the baddest man in heaven got my back. That's Psalm 46, right? For a mighty, Martin Luther wrote a tune to that psalm too. It's a mighty fortress is our God, warrior for the ages, right? And the Lord is, but the original one, the Lord is our refuge, God is our strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, right? So I'm like, the baddest man in heaven's got my back. I'm not gonna be afraid, And so there are all these different things, and then even cooler than that with the Psalms is getting other people to write and join in. And so I spent a lot of time with the Lord, just asking the Lord, what do you want me to say to me in this? Looking at it, I did some background research, found a lot about ancient cultures and some of the ways they think to make so that I could understand some of the symbols. When they mention a certain city, I don't say, we're going to London. And there are certain images and feelings that come up in you whenever I say those things. And I teach this in my writing workshops. You can check it out. There's a website, howtowriteworkshops.com. But when I mention London, you have associations with that are different than when I mention Stoke-on-Trent.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm taking a vacation in London, you're like, oh, okay, it's not a bad choice,
Yeah.
If I'm taking a vacation in Stoke-on-Trent, you're like, might want to rethink that,
Anyone living in
Right?
Stoke-on-Trent listening to this, we love you and we love your town.
We do. And I love Stoke-on-Trent, and I love Northampton. I loved all the cities that people dog on in England, because there's amazing people there.
Hey, I live
right?
in Luton. We regularly get voted as like the worst town, so...
Yeah, you and Milton Keynes, right?
Yeah.
Right. Cardboard, whatever, cutout type. People want to, but you can make beauty anywhere. We can, God's given us creativity. Anyway, so just using those, the raw, see, we're not worrying about is it right or wrong. If you figure out, like, okay, when he says, if they mention going to Jerusalem, that means something different than if he says going to Zion. Why does he say Jerusalem one time and going to Zion another? Why would he say Bethlehem, or why would he say Shiloh? So I got to do some research and find out what those symbols mean. And then finding out the way that they even wrote poetry, some of their worldview and how they thought about things. I found out a lot about that stuff so I could understand it. Once I can understand it, then I can start going, oh, this is way cooler than I thought. It's way more shocking. It's way more relevant. You got guys cursing God out in there. Yeah. You got guys being really raw with our emotions. And I don't get it. It's in the Bible. But we're afraid to bring it into the church.
Yeah.
This tells me that there really is a lie from the enemy that we have believed, and it is, and there's principalities that are warring against the bride of Christ, keeping us from being as beautiful as God intended us to be. And you can't turn the ship 90 degrees or 180 degrees at a time, or people fall off. Yeah. But you know what? If we can start going to the Lord and asking God, would you show me how to open up and how to tie in on some of these guys. I mean, this is before Jesus came, died, rose from the dead, and David was experiencing the Holy Spirit's power. He was experiencing the grace of God. He was experiencing forgiveness for his sin without being stoned. Yeah. I mean, he was allowed to stay king, and he murdered a guy and committed adultery with his wife, right? Yeah. Like, how do we let our pastors get away with that? Yeah. And yet somehow God forgave him. And I'm saying we need to really explore what God's actually saying here and get into them. The Psalms are way more powerful than we think, and we need to stop playing as if they need to be safe. And if we need to make sure we don't upset people. Because the last I checked, Jesus was in the business of hanging out with the people who were screwed up and broken, and in the business of upsetting people who are trying to play it safe and follow every stinking one of the rules. Yeah. So that's what I love about the Psalms. And you know what? If people, the thing is too, I don't come in and just throw the whole book at them, throw the whole book at people right away and go, well, you need to, get with the Psalms. That doesn't win anybody over, right? It's God's kindness, His gentleness, His tenderness that leads us to repentance. Right, that Paul talks about. And so he says, do you neglect the patience of God, knowing that His kindness leads us to repentance? Like, we need to be acting this way with each other and go, hey, you know what, wherever you are, let's just go one step further into the presence of God. And so that's what I would say, with your churches, you may not be able to go baddest man in heaven, funky God of misfit mercy on them, but you may be able to go, the God who interrupted my bathroom time, or interrupted my shower. Maybe God pours His love on me like a shower, of warm water, and I am bathing in His mercy. I am awash under the faucet of His love. And I'm going to He takes all my sin, He flushes them down the toilet. I could never go and grab them out again. They're gone. They're as far from me as, the septic system is from, maybe I'm not going to go that far, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I had you with shower, I had you with faucet, I had you with flush my sins down the toilet, and my goodness, Psalm 103 just came to life.
Yeah.
And you can do that in your bodies. And I would say too, spoken word, sometimes you go, how can you use spoken word? Spoken word, if it's not really tied to the rhythm, is hard to use for congregational worship unless you're having people like recite a psalm together or something. And what I usually find is spoken word is great for stimulating excitement and a response and stimulating emotion, so that people then, when they sing following it up, they're going to have a deeper passion, deeper response. We did this with Advent once at my church, where it was the joy time, and usually people come and they read a service and there's candles and it's so, lovely, right? All those different things. For us, the one was joy, and I was like, you can't do joy without some dancing or something. So I got a drummer, and I wrote this piece about this is not some old story, and I brought in references to Phil Collins. I could feel it coming in the air. Oh no, the Phil Collins. This is not. Who even knows what you're talking about in that song? And it's like when. Because this is more than a feeling. It's more than a feeling. And I was like, when the harmonic keyboard strains of Boston have faded to dust, this will still be beating. And so I go into this thing, and essentially at the end of it, I said, we can't wait for you to come today. And as I was doing this, I had the mic, the drummer's playing. We're doing, spontaneous drum solos combined with spoken word stuff. It was amazing. We pulled it off, but it worked. We practiced. And I ran around the whole congregation, and as I did, I was like, this could go really bad, but I just took this risk. I ran around the whole congregation, and everybody stood to their feet as I did that. He starts beating out a drum beat. I'm yelling. There was a shout, this primal shout erupted from the whole congregation, and then we went into deep inside, I'm crying out for more of you, and release me, Father, to dance like a child again. The worship team came up. We all started doing it. They joined in as we sang and played, and it was amazing. So, having a video, having some creative art, having a dance. I saw a worship leader once. She was a children's worship leader, and she couldn't carry a tune. How do you be a children's worship leader and you can't sing? Well, she was a dancer, and so she would play worship songs or videos or whatever, and then she would teach them a dance with it. The kids, they loved it. It was the best, some of the best worship I've ever experienced. The presence of God was thick with those kids, right? So trying different ways and bringing it in at once to stimulate then a response, and then going to something that they know, because you always have to, great art is the combination of the familiar plus the unexpected. We do really good with familiar. We need to bring in some unexpected. You can't do all unexpected, or people don't, it's like if the trumpet makes an uncertain sound, who's going to march into battle? But you can't also do all familiar, otherwise people get bored. So all unexpected, people don't understand. All familiar, it becomes lifeless. And you got to bring those in, bring the unexpected in to stimulate a response, and then bring the familiar in so that people can go, yes, isn't that oh, that's right. I forgot how powerful this song actually is. I've sung it so many times. So
yeah, that's great. Hey, are you listening, people?
Yeah, have fun editing that.
That was good.
Do not put your trust in Barack Obama. No matter your inclination, we finally got an African American in the White House consecration or scent of perspiration, don't you do it, 'cause sure, he's got those big-eared good looks that no woman can deny. He's a Harvard-educated guy, and I hear he fries up anyone who opposes his healthcare plan for breakfast, but we all know he can't help me with the contents of my grocery list, and all those clever speech-making tricks aren't the kind of fix my heart needs when I'm feeling lonely under a crowded sky. And let's face it, someday the boy won't be alive. He's gonna die just like you and I and all of Bill Clinton's endless stream of ladies in the night. So don't get your hopes up, all right? And While I'm at it, don't bet all your money on a bunch of horses. No matter what kind of tip you squeezed from your inside sources, cause that orange juice ain't fresh pressed, turns kinda bitter when Smarty Jones is stumbling down the stretch, and Lord knows there hadn't been a Triple Crown winner since the 70s, and not even the rippling flanks of the majestic Secretariat of the feel-good story of Seabiscuit overcoming the odds seemed like a sure thing at the time, so save yourself the peace of mind and put your money where your blind eyes can see it. You know, come to think of it, you can't count on the weather, the attraction of your chick magnet pimpified pleather pants, and...
That's great. Well, I just want to take a bit of a turn as well, because you were just mentioning to me that you've been on a bit of a sabbatical year from performing and stuff, and I'd love it if you could share a little bit about that, and you know, maybe some folks are listening and they're kind of feeling a bit burned out, or they're just giving out too much, or you know, it'd be great to hear your perspective on that as well, I think.
Yeah. So about a year ago, it was a little more than a year ago, we found out that we, you know, we're pregnant with Kaz, our little boy. Yay. Yeah, it was exciting. He's amazing, and so it was getting into fall time, and we were deciding whether we were going to be team leaders for some small groups again in our church, and we were just feeling, I mean, with Vicky's pregnancy, we'd been on tour. I mean, going on tour in the first trimester of your pregnancy with your wife, first time in a foreign country. We were in England, and then we went to Spain for vacation, and that turned out incredible. Anyway, and so after all this, and after the summer, we released the Exposing the Psalms album launch, and had all this stuff that we went through, and we were just tired. And so we were thinking about this, and we were driving down to see some friends, and Vicky and I were talking. She goes, "Can we just take a break? Could we just, you know, is it even allowed for leaders to take a break?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness." It's like, what have we become that we can't take a break? And so we started praying into that, and we both just felt like we heard really strongly that the Lord was saying, one, that we should take a year to just spend time with enjoying our new son and each other, and also that we needed to stop touring and performing for the year, stop teaching and writing workshops, and in my marketing consulting business, I needed to give away as much of the workload as I possibly could to other partners. And now I'm like going, hey, this is like you know, you're talking about half our income.
Yeah.
You know, but I knew, and I'd been thinking about this for a while, that God had done this thing with Israel. At least he'd offered them a plan. They never took him up on it. But he offered them a plan of a Sabbath year of rest every 7 years. And he said, if you'll take the Sabbath year of rest, I will provide for you enough harvest for the year that you take the rest, and also for the year after when you're planting and starting to reap again. And I was like, wow, that seems like a big ask, but why didn't they ever take him up on it? And he seems to be saying that he actually wants to take care of us, not us provide, you know, him offerings. You know, wow. So I was like, I'd been thinking about this for a while, and I felt like God said, I want you to take that year. So you're like, okay. So we decide to. And we say, you know, no to all this ministry stuff, all, you know, touring, all this whatever. And say we're just going to rest and everything. And just after that, and I start giving away the work to other clients, and this is giving away salary, right? And other guys, I still retain part of the way we have it set up, that I still make money even if, you know, the other guys are doing the work, because I started the client and I provide some strategy or whatever. But so I start giving away the work, and right after that, I think I'd given away like 2-3 clients for getting other writers to do what I was doing. And right after that, this huge client comes in. Would you work for us? I was like, well, the only way I can do that is if I put a team together. That's great. We'll pay you lots of money. I was like, what the heck? You know, if I would not have given away the work to other people, I wouldn't have been ready and been able to handle the increased workload and bring other team on. I had a new shift in perspective. And somebody had given me a word that, hey, what's gotten you to here isn't what's going to get you to there. And I thought it meant about spirituality, family and stuff. And instead, God was like, I mean it in your work too, because that's important to me also. So anyway, so that happened, and that has continued to happen. And so I'm working. So we haven't done any touring. There's been some traveling that we've done, whether vacation or even out to see like this a new client or something like that. But we've been together, and what's happened is I'm working probably half as much, and we're making 3 times as much.
Wow.
And God's going like, see, like you're not even scratching the tip of the iceberg of the blessing that that I'm about to pour out. We're continuing to pour out more, and what I'm seeing is God is enabling us now to get to the place where we have our needs provided, and even more than that. So then now we can go and invest in stuff that God's doing in His kingdom, whether financially, or He's also freeing up our time so that the desires that He puts in us afterwards are really great. And the other thing that's been happening is God's been speaking to both of me and Vicky, saying, hey, what if you found out that I love you just for you and not for all the ministry and stuff that you do? Yeah. And we've been discovering that. It's been amazing. Yeah. And it's made, there's no pressure on creativity. I can come up with stuff that's terrible and it's just fun. And then discovering new things in that, and finding new ways to write, new ways to even perform, spending time with friends. These things are important, and somehow we seem to throw those out because we say we're about ministry. God doesn't, God's wanting a bride, not just a worker. Yeah. And if you have been, sort of seduced into that idea that God just wants you to work for Him, I'm telling you that also. That's a lie from the enemy. And yes, there is work, but it comes out of His rest. And as we go and spend time in His presence and we rest in Him, God said this to a church, one of the 7 churches in Revelation, right? He says, I know your works, your love, and your labors, right? And I know that you've tested those who are apostles and have found them not, right? And I know that your works now are greater than they were at the beginning. But I have this one thing against you, that you've left your first love. Yeah. And so now I say to you, return to your first works, the ones that you did at the first. Return to that love, because if you don't, I'll come and I'll take away your lamp. Yeah. I don't want to lose the light of His joy, of His salvation. I don't want to lose the light of life. Yeah. And so I see it, and you know what I noticed? 7 years ago was the time when I had been touring with the guitarist, Paul Finley, and we've been touring all over the world. And like at the end of that, and 7 years ago, we stopped touring together. My booking manager stopped working with me. My girlfriend left me. All this stuff happened, and it forced me to take a year of not touring and performing. And I was like, these things seem to happen to me every 7 years. I was like, why don't I actually stop and position myself where God can pour out as much of His blessing on me as possible? Yeah. And so it's been this amazing rest and refreshing, and I'm excited for living even more in that rest and refreshing when, whatever touring and performing that He has planned for us starts again, in 2017. And so, I don't know, and even feeling like God said, hey, I want to be your promoter. Wow, that would be cool. You're actually that real, Yeah. See, that's the deal. We don't believe God's actually that real, and we need to, because He's more real than us. Yeah, we're the ones who want to become real like Him, and we need to rest. So I just counsel you, if you're a worship leader, if you're a songwriter out there, take a break every now and then, especially, take a break once a week and just indulge in God's pleasure and His goodness for you. Take a break even from writing and go and read some other stuff. Go and watch a movie. Go and sing some new stuff. Go and make some stuff up and just, be silly, be goofy, because it's out of those times that so much of the creativity comes, and we're not pushing ourselves so hard. And I think God wants to make us more beautiful that way. So that's what we've been experiencing.
That's great. That's really great. It chimes with my experience as well, having taken this year to go to Sweden.
Yeah, what did you experience in that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same really. I think it's interesting how much family time we got. It felt like, I mean, we were doing some work, a little bit like you, but we were doing some work, but it was a lot of kind of sabbatical, a lot of family time. And God provided. I think it's interesting now coming back, trying to start up again. It's feeling a challenge. And I think, you know, I guess one of the things is just not to, and listening to you speak there, is, you know, not to forget that, you know, this isn't about us. Okay, now back to normal, back to normality, back to making it all happen on your own, in your own strength. You know, it's actually, no, it's back to, right, what have you learned? Have you learned that God is faithful? But yeah, it really chimes with me. You know, all that you've said, and in fact, thinking back, we did a similar thing, and it was, I don't think if it was 7 or possibly 8 years ago, but I can see what you're meaning about that 7-year cycle, and you know, the rhythm of the week. Sarah got someone sent her a message. Some guy in Sweden had come up with this great idea for kind of productivity and healthy lifestyle, and he was saying, what I do is I work 6 days. And then I take 1 day completely off. And he was like marketing this as like this new great idea.
Never been thought of before.
Like, life hack thing. And it's like, wow. You know, if only somebody had told us about that before.
Right. And why do we listen to that guy and not listen to the original guy who spoke from heaven?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Hey, it's great. God uses anything, you know? If he can use a donkey, he can use us to speak something new to people. And you know, we need it. And you know, the primary thing, you know, your brain kind of works like 2 brains in one, and that part of your brain that knows right from wrong and sorts everything and puts it in order and looks for how everything, you know, can be measured and can be studied and all that kind of stuff. That part gets tired over the day. That's the primary reason you need sleep at night. But the right side of your brain, the imaginative, creative side, never goes to sleep, and that's why your dreams are so weird and strange at night. So it's always thinking symbolic. There's no like actual literal words in there and stuff, and so everything you're dreaming has a symbolic meaning, and that's always going. And the other part of it is that creative imaginative side, its function is to look for the solution to complex patterns it's never seen before. And the left side of your brain doesn't do that so much. So it's kind of like when you say, I'm not going to ever rest, you're stopping yourself from having breakthroughs. You're stopping yourself from coming up with really cool ideas, and God even speaking through what he's designed in you already to come up with a new way of looking at things, a new life, a new creativity coming out. So don't say no to that, you know, follow that bunny trail a little bit more often. And at the same time, you also need that left side that says, hey, wait a second. You realize you're leading people into, you know, saying that these people over here are evil and we should hate them and all that kind of stuff. That's not right. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, I won't go down that pattern. You know, don't want that path, whatever. So enjoy that rest. You know, that rest it stimulates that creativity for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Peter, tell us where people can check out your stuff. What's the best parts of the internet to find you?
The parts of I know this year of rest makes me even more like run away from social media. I mean, you can find, if you look for me on Facebook, you can find me, Peter Nevland. I don't post very often. I do have a website, spokengroove.com, that's in somewhat of a woeful state, but there are quite a few lyrics on there. Probably the best place to look. Go look me up on YouTube. Just put in Peter Nevland. Yep. Nevland spelled like the land of Nev. You know, think of me as Peter Pan if you need to. Whether it's green tights and me taking you on trips to Neverland, or whether it's me looking like, whoa, like I'm looking like Shaggy, whoa, and you know, all that stuff.
You do look a bit like Shaggy. It's true.
He really does. You know, and Shaggy and Scooby, whatever you need. But go look me up, Peter Nevland, on YouTube. It's probably the best. And then also, if you want to improve your writing, there's a ton of great tips that I've mostly just learned from other people and incorporated into my own writing. And there are videos and things on howtowriteworkshops.com. Because most people don't teach you how to write. They just say, here's good writing, figure it out. So there's some very easy principles that make your writing far better, can improve your writing dramatically very quickly. So check it out, howtowriteworkshops.com. Lots of stuff on there. And probably look me up on YouTube, Peter Nevland. So
great. Thank you so much, Peter, for
welcome,
sharing.
Sam.
And God
thanks
bless.
for calling, man. It's been great hanging out.